Hey, welcome everybody. On today's show, we're talking about a X post that came out not too long ago from Allie K. Miller. And she said the AI skills gap isn't about coding or prompt engineering. It's about systems thinking. Companies scrambling to hire LLM experts are missing the point. We need people who understand both the business process and how AI can transform it. So we're going to be talking about systems thinking. We're going to be talking about the interconnectedness of all the different parts and pieces. Do we really need LLM experts? Is that still part of the solution? Should we be making AI agents that are niche focused, or do we need to be thinking larger and more broadly about the entire system? So that's going to be the topic for today. This is the Daily AI Show. Welcome. Today is March 17th. It's St. Patrick's Day for everybody who's pretending to be Irish today, or as I saw over the weekend, we're pretending to be Irish. And with us, we have Andy, Beth, Carl was just here, and we'll be back, I'm sure, and Brian. And yeah, we're here to have a really good conversation about this. So let's bring Carl back in here real quick.
Here we go. What happened there? The outro went or something? I don't know.
It's all right. I was just saying, Carl, as we were getting going here, I said you're gonna be back in just a second. But I think you're probably one of the, I don't know if you want to jump in first here, but when I think about systems thinking, I kind of always think of you first. And not that we don't all talk about it, but I remember you talking about it on the show probably even like a year or so ago, maybe even more than that. And so I'd be curious what you thought about, Allie's X post. And, she's basically saying, do we need LLM experts? Is that really the way to go? Don't we need people who understand? Of course, you and I talk all the time, and so does everybody else on the show about, hey, you need people who understand business. That's why consultants are so valuable, because they can go in and understand the business too. But that doesn't mean we can just throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? I mean, we still need people who understand prompting, still have to understand the other side of it. So how do you wrap this all together for you?
I think what makes this, I think, unique, and let's compare it to something a little bit different, right? So let's say, and I think, Beth, I'm going to use kind of your industry as the example, right? Because I know so many businesses have hired, let's say, a Salesforce implementation expert. So that person's main task is to go in and, I'm going to compare it against another profession too, but implement essentially Salesforce specifically for that organization. Do they need some business thinking? Yes. But the ones I've met in the past, their entire focus is kind of understand how the integrations happen with the various systems, what the goal of the company is. But outside of that, implement Salesforce. Like, that is one thing that they do. That's what you hire them to do. Now, on let's say it's a spectrum, I would say on the other side of the spectrum, you would hire a Deloitte or McKinsey person. Do they have specific technical skills? Maybe, but you don't hire them for that, right? You hire them for the strategy, really for the business. Any big decision you need to make, you hire them, right? So you have kind of two different type of groups. I think with AI, you need kind of that merge of both. Whether it's one person or two people, ideally a couple people who have, the technical understanding of large language models, is specifically because it's changing so fast. And when you implement that implementation, you do, unlike Salesforce, it changes, but Salesforce is relatively the same, like the same functions, the same things over and over and over again. There could be some new features and tools, but it's relatively, this is what Salesforce does, versus something vague and ambiguous that McKinsey or Deloitte would handle. But now you have something that you need to implement, but once you do, you have to be on top of it, because a month or two later, your implementation could be completely different. The models are changing, the tools are changing, the tools could be cannibalized. What you built could be no longer, like, that's a fundamental thing we are always worried about at 0 to 60. So you kind of have to have both now. And what she said was true, because you're going to have the technical side that you need to continue adapting, but you also have to understand the business side. And this is my big rant, is you've got a lot of like AI automation agencies, quote unquote, or just AI agencies, that their big focus is on the implementation, the technical. It's like, hey, we could do this, we could do this, we can implement, we can automate this. I'm like, that's cool that you know how to do that. It's important. But on the other side is you are leading with the solution. You did not actually listen to the problem. So you've made all these templates, lead one, sales one, whatever. Let's take AI automation, for example. And then you want to apply that specific thing that you've made to a company. Yeah, sure, they may have leads and marketing problems, but maybe if you've actually done like a discovery, which I'm always pressing for, that may be not the number one or easiest deployment. Then you have to think about the change management too, from a business perspective. Can you get all these people to actually adapt this new behavior? Because it isn't as easy as, here, here's a template, I'm going to implement it for you, and we're going to make it business mission, like business critical function. That isn't going to happen, because if you've made it a business critical function and it breaks, and inevitably some of these things break, what's your, like, what's your solution to that? What's your plan to ensure that the business critical functions still exist? And more importantly, it's not just you, the team has to be knowledgeable on how to do that deployment. Then you have to think about data security, and then all the aspects of an actual technical deployment in an organization. Junmi would know, Andy would know, Brian, you would know that it isn't just the technical or the technology. The technology is actually the easiest thing. The hard thing is all the people and all the processes that go around it.
Absolutely. And I'm going to jump in and say, I don't think Allie was saying that no one needs LLM engineers. It's just that from a typical business standpoint, it's not that you want, like you may not need to hire the LLM engineer or the prompt engineering. It's actually the people who understand the system in which the prompts are engaged, right? That's more of what you're looking for. And that's actually a perfect position for your in house AI expert, because that is the piece that will essentially remain the same in terms of the function, in terms of the task, right? As Carl was saying, like a sales or a lead kind of thing. That is like, if you drew that out, that system of things coming in being analyzed in a particular way and then some response going out, that is the same. How the system gets engaged, what the steps are, what part of that is automated, what the prompt is, those are things that may change as you move forward, or as AI moves forward. But that system itself needs to be held higher, right? Like that's the piece. And as we've all experienced, right? That there's an upgrade, ChatGPT, somebody upgrades, OpenAI upgrades their stuff, um, and and suddenly what was working as a prompt to generate something is now generating something that's not quite as good or not at all or whatever that is. And that gets assessed based on somebody paying attention to the system, because there's some piece of that ideally that somebody's in charge of before it goes out.
I think that's the big difference I see with businesses that we start. I mean, Carl, with what you do, the 0 to 60, but anybody else, I mean, we all work with other companies and consult on the side or with our main jobs and stuff like that. So all of us are always having conversations. At least for me, there's a just gigantic difference between companies who do take this sort of top down approach and think holistically about all the pain points, to your point, Carl, and where they're struggling. Then if they're working with me or they're working with Scale, they're consultant, or you guys, I'm sure the same, like you really start to listen a lot. Carl, you talked about that a lot, and really try to understand instead of just trying to slap a template on it. I don't think that's unique to AI, by the way. I think that's just good. That's just good business practice. That's good consulting. I don't think there's anything unique here to AI. I think this is the way you really should be breaking down any huge major roadblocks, pain points, growth strategies, on and on and on for that. But, when you have companies that are like invested and they're willing to work with you, sometimes the biggest roadblocks for me as a consultant is just simply getting the right people on a Zoom call or an email chain or whatever to answer questions. It can be really hard to just get people to say what they're actually struggling with. There's job security issues, there's human issues to that. There's all sorts of things that get in the way from really uncovering where the problems are, because people are fearful that if you uncover the problem and it's linked back to me, maybe I'm the problem. Right. And so, like, there's people who are very, very protective of that, protective of their jobs, as there should be. And so that could be really, really difficult. But if you can work through that, if you have, and this is like best case scenario for me. If I work with companies who have great leadership, who come in with the right wording and talk to all the different departments and say, this isn't about getting rid of jobs. This is about understanding better how we can grow as a company. We could all profit from that, and so on and so forth. There's just better ways to do it. Then I feel like you have a really good opportunity to work with them. And I don't personally agree with Allie's post. I think it's way too much the other way. Honestly, I think it's a mixture of experts. It's a, not to use that term, but it's a mixture of AI experts, and also people who deeply understand the business. And if you can get consultants in there or internal people who can bridge that gap, even better. But I don't see that any different than people who are coders, who had to put together websites. You can't just slap up a website. You could off of a template. A lot of times it's going to miss for that particular company because of the things they have going on. And so you might start with a template, but you would have built out a website based on what they were telling you and all that. I see this as the same. So I think hers is a little too strong in terms of saying companies scrambling to hire LLM experts are missing the point. I think that's incorrect. I don't know about scrambling to hire LLM. You should be getting people who understand AI and are LLM experts. You shouldn't wholly rely on them to build your company into the future, but they should definitely be part of the discussion, part of the team. Absolutely. So I'm not quite sure. I mean, maybe there's more to what she was trying to say, but I think it's a little limiting in what she was trying to put out there.
Well, I suspect that it's that what we're seeing are companies trying to hire those two pieces, and that there isn't a business analyst or a systems analyst or the piece. Like, you're just not seeing that person sit at the table or that person exist in the company. And I have a couple certifications for Salesforce, and one of them is business analyst, because Salesforce understands that this is a really important piece. And the business analyst is in the Salesforce world at the table, so they know enough about Salesforce to be able to explain, right, what the Salesforce person is going to do. And they know enough about business and what the sorts of things that in this case systems, the sorts of systems that are engaged in like a lead in a lead generation kind of thing, or the sales process once the opportunity is identified and it goes into that pipeline. Like, that is that interpretation person is something that Salesforce understands and actually certifies people in.
Makes sense. By the way, Jimmy joined us a little while ago. Jimmy's been here, but it's been silent and stuff like that. Jimmy, Andy, either of you guys want to jump in on this? Jimmy, you might have missed just the front part of it, but and I'll actually I'll reread it, because Greg is saying in the comments, wait, hold on, what did I miss? So I get it. If you only came in like a minute into the show, you might have missed this initial post, which was the concept of the idea for this show. And it was just a post by somebody called Allie K. Miller. I don't know her personally, but she had put out a post that looks like on X. And this is what it said. It said the AI skills gap isn't about coding or prompt engineering. It's about systems thinking. Companies scrambling to hire LLM experts are missing the point. We need people who understand both the business process and how AI can transform it. I mean, that last sentence I 100% agree with. I just feel like the stuff above it maybe contradicts that a little bit, because yeah, we need people who both understand, but they're not always going to be the same person. I mean, it's wonderful if they are. And if that's what you're really saying, if that's what she's really saying, then my answer would be go figure out who the experts are in all the areas, put that systems in place, like you were saying, Beth, and then go get those people trained up in AI. But like that, if that's what we're going to do, get your experts, teach them how to do prompting and think about the entire system, put them in a room together, make sure there's no, barriers and silos between them, and then train them how to use AI appropriately.
So
so just to be clear, Allie K. Miller is actually one of the thought leaders in AI, and has a background from Amazon, IBM, and is someone called Allie K. Miller. It's like, somebody called Ethan Mollick, and in fact, Ethan was her professor. I just want to say that. So, like, she's speaking from the place of being called in to have these conversations with really high level executives in companies. So,
yeah, I would say she's, at least by my observation, she's the voice for major enterprises. She's got that audience, and so she's a top level consultant in AI. And I want to talk about this idea of systems thinking from the standpoint of somebody who's been both a chief executive officer and a chief operations officer, chief operating officer, COO. And I was, numerous times asked, like, what does a COO do that's different from what a CEO does? And I would say, well, the COO is really responsible for business process management. If the CEO's job is to make sure that the cash is on hand and the resources are allocated appropriately for strategic purposes, then this COO is responsible for making sure the trains run on time and don't run off the tracks, and everybody on board isn't getting jostled around in the process. So as the chief operating officer most recently at the company Life Aid Beverage Company, I had a fellow on my team. It's a very small team in that group. Most of the other teams are under the major departments, but who had worked as a systems analyst at Seagate previously. Okay, so systems analysts employ systems thinking. And what's important about systems thinking is the recognition that the interoperation of humans and information technology systems is part of an orchestration that has to be carefully tuned and improved continuously over time. So now we have AI to support business process management or business process management improvements, and systems thinking is the first step, as you're describing, Brian. You have to make sure that solutions are designed to consider their broader implications on other touch points in those systems and on organizational performance. Like, does the introduction of this change to the system, either on the information technology side or in the organization design that's going to, interact with that, does that have cultural implications? And that's part of the systems thinking. So you have to design the intervention, if you will, of the introduction of new technologies in a way that makes sure that they're adopted and that there's indeed improvement in the interoperation between those IT systems and the humans who are a part of it. Okay, so systems analysts start that process by, they assess the existing processes. So the first step is to understand what they are. And this fellow who worked for me was the go-to when we wanted to produce an information flow diagram, which is a graphic depiction of everything that happens in every step of one of our, let's call them for generics, production processes, right? Not just manufacturing production, but also the production of content for, marketing, and how does that interrelate with the information systems that are, automated marketing systems and so on. So we have this guy would be able to produce, using tools he's familiar with, a beautiful information flow diagram so you could understand what was actually happening under the hood when our company delivered products successfully to consumers in multiple channels. So that's the first thing. You got to look at the process and identify, but hopefully where there are some inefficiencies, right? Then you can start to think about, okay, how do we optimize this workflow and ensure that there's alignment between that technology solution, if we're introducing that, and it's in alignment with the people and their understanding of what the company is doing and what the business requirements are, and more importantly, longer term organizational goals. So that system thinking is a holistic perspective.
Mhm.
And that's what's key. And I think that's what Allie's saying is, what's really important as you enter into the idea of employing AI to leverage the company's existing resources and existing processes. You add these things in, but you have to think about all of the interactions that are happening there. That's systems thinking. And if you apply that with advanced AI technologies like assessing the business processes, and AI is getting to the point now where it's smart enough to be hooked up to your systems and understand at least the systems side of it, not necessarily knowing anything other than, oh, a human provides input at this stage of the process. I don't know what the human does outside of that, but I do see that I need a human to do that, some monkey fingers, as we'd like to call them, to come in and interact with that system. And then on top of that, you can start to build automations, you can do predictive analytics, and you can provide holistically aligned decision support systems for the entire enterprise. And that's where AI has got some chops for us. But in the hands of a good systems analyst, AI is just the new technology that's being inserted into something that they already comprehend and have diagrammed and understand in order to optimize that for the business.
One thing that I want to been close to 2 years doing this is that when you are hiring somebody, there's kind of two groups out there. One is, and the majority is, selling a solution. So we've run into many different groups. Their primary goal is to sell the specific AI solution to specific companies, right? Then there's kind of groups like us, which we don't sell solutions. We sell, hey, we will review your business problems, then we will recommend specific AI solutions and we'll implement those solutions. And if you want us to review a solution that you are looking for, we'll do that too, as well. So there's a couple of those things that we see, and sometimes if you don't start with the business problems first, then we've run into so many cases where some companies want AI so bad that it's like they're just looking through their entire business through the lens of AI. And there's a lot of processes and workflows we see like that's not an AI solvable. You could force AI to solve that, but that doesn't make any sense. In fact, here's a simple thing that we would recommend, or that's not a AI problem, that's a business strategy problem. You should go back to your, however you develop your business strategies and figure that out, because that's kind of not in our wheelhouse. So, but we have agency partners that we can recommend to you, but that's something that you should do yourself. So that's what we're seeing in the market, is that the two different groups, and it's kind of heavily tailored to one group right now, is everyone's trying to sell their own solution. And which makes it easy for us because we're not trying to sell a solution, although we are thinking of, like, what we're seeing is very, very similar problems across very, very similar industries or companies, in which we are really, really thinking about building it internally and selling it ourselves to very specific groups.
Right.
And we're not trying to go full SaaS. Or another thing that we've started doing with a couple companies is we would, with their, like, I guess in partnership, they would contract us to build it, then they would license it into their industry. So we would propose it, but then they would essentially keep that license, and then we take a cut out of that.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying is kind of the same way we approached it with Scaled. And it took us a while, really a good bit of 2024, early 2024, probably late 2023, for us to sort of figure out what the right the right mix of that was. Now for scale, we're helping sale. It's a sales consulting company, of which I've worked on both the LinkedIn and the AI side of it. So from my perspective, we were going about it and trying to figure out like, well, what is it? And early on, it was more or less a prompt library. We still have people who pay for our prompt libraries and like to get those or whatever, and they're valuable, but things have evolved and stuff. And then it was that when GPTs came out, custom GPTs, it was like, okay, well, there are right now there's 10 of them. It's probably 15 total, but 10 that are out there that people pay for, that generally solve the same company after company after company sales team process, right? Whether it's helping me book a meeting, a lot of it comes around prospecting. How do I do better prospecting? How do I do it faster? These kind of things. Or I need to role play, or I need to be able to dig into these investor reports really, really quickly. These kind of things. But then to your point, Car, like what we often do is we use those sort of like generalized GPTs, and then we talk to clients. I get on calls with clients, and they're like, I really like that, one that helps me book a meeting, but that's not going to necessarily, we need a little more, or we needed this. In fact, I was just writing up a report this morning from a client that gave us a nice review basically, and said that they would be happy to talk to other clients on our behalf and stuff, which is very nice of them. In their particular case, I connected to, it was the same basic idea, but I connected to their product catalog, excuse me. And so when this report would come back from the GPT, for them, because of the way they dealt with distributors, and it wasn't like a direct sales to the other company, and there were some other complexities in it, it was the same basic structure that I could start from the template and say, well, you still have these same pain points that almost all sales teams are. However, you're unique because you have distributors, you have a massive, massive product catalog that we needed to deal with and stuff like that. So that was the customization on the back side of it. And I don't know, to your point, Carl, I mean, you're always talking about this, but it's the same way I feel like it too. It's just getting in there and better understanding, asking more questions, understanding the business better, really trying to uncover what it is, in fact, the business is trying to accomplish. And then to your point, I've definitely been on calls where I've either said no right off the bat, that I don't think AI can solve that. Or what I'm usually saying is a second option is, I don't think AI can solve that today, but here's what I would suggest you do to build to a future where AI will solve that. Or to your point, I can't solve this for you. I think this is where your real problem is. Once you solve that problem and get rid of your silos and that other problem, let's circle back on now whether AI can be put on top of that to find new efficiencies. But to your point, sometimes the answer is, you do have a problem. Throwing AI on top of this is not the answer. It'd be like buying Copilot from Microsoft and saying that will solve it, and you're like, it won't. Your SharePoint's a mess, but okay, like now you have a huge bill. But hey, if you go solve that SharePoint issue, and the fact that nobody knows what anybody else is doing in SharePoint, we might have if I was a Microsoft shop, we might have a solution now where Copilot starts to make more sense for you because you've solved that other problem. So, I do think there's a world where templates make sense, where you can go in with general ideas like you're talking about. But then I almost find almost every single time I do a customized one, they're never, ever, clone copies of the last company where I just swapped out a knowledge document. It's never that easy. It's always more complex, more nuanced than that.
100%. You can have the two companies in the same industry, like head-to-head competitors, do exactly the same thing, but the workflows and processes in each business is so different on how they do things. So for you to just dump one, oh, we've done it for this company, we'll do the exact same thing, you can't, because you have to still go through that kind of discovery and listen to them, because it's not how they do things, it's not how people do things, and how that shop is set up is so different than the other ones. So, and when I saw the post too, I'm assuming when she says LLM experts, it's not just, like large language model expert. We're talking about AI in general, because there's a lot more to AI than just LLMs. Like I'm making that assumption, or I'm not, but I'm thinking that's like, it's like, hey, there's a lot more that AI can do than just be, Claude or ChatGPT.
I was going to ask you guys, because I don't know who Allie is, but you guys do, and there's a lot of people in our comments who like her and say that she's amazing and stuff, which is great. I'm just not as familiar with her, but I was curious what you guys think, like Beth or Andy, since you were saying you're more familiar with her or anybody else. When she says the AI skills gap, the first couple words, the AI skills gap isn't about coding and prompting. What do you think she means by AI skills gap? Because Andy, you were saying that no, she's a main voice for enterprise. So I guess maybe I'm getting trapped in the AI skills gap. What do you think she's trying to say, or what do you think she means by the skills gap? As in, people don't understand how to use AI, or is it different than that, you think?
Well, I'll say, without knowing,
Sure.
what
Yeah, sure.
exactly it meant, but
Yeah.
the way I interpret it is that if there is a gap between what the promise and capability of AI is and how enterprises have failed to adopt in a meaningful ways that's demonstrating significant productivity gains across industries yet, right? That's not so much about, can we prompt an AI to do something? Do we have the workflow automation tools? It's more about the gap is driven by, there aren't enough people with the systems thinking inside the enterprise saying, here's where our current processes can benefit from AI, and here's how to implement them in a reasonable and holistically aligned way. I think that's really what she's saying. What she's learning from her interaction with enterprises is that there isn't an office of systems analysis anymore. Maybe there are in the largest enterprises, but where that exists and it's completely knowledgeable about AI, then they're probably seeing traction. But overall, there's been some concern in the investment community, particularly, that AI has failed to fulfill on its promises in enterprise. And then there's others, like the McKinseys of the world will say, oh, no, we're getting major, improvements and gains. We're seeing the gains. And I'm hopeful about those things. But I think that's what she's addressing, is there is a process to the process of AI enhancement. And it requires systems thinking. And that's where we have I hate to say a big shortage, but we have a shortage of those people in those companies who are addressing it from that standpoint.
Right. And part of that is also that set of skills may not have a particular job title, right? And that set of skills may, in fact, be someone who is interpreting for just one section of the organization. And so there may be a couple people who need that set of skills and can come together with the knowledge of AI, because I think that the next part of her post is about companies scrambling to hire people, right? Like, how can I hire someone that's going to make my experience with AI in my enterprise different? And I think what she's saying, again, like, this was a this is a 3-sentence
Right.
tweet,
Right.
as
Yeah.
as the chat has mentioned, and we're really dissecting it. But I did think it was a strong position, right? Like, it's a
Yeah.
strong statement. Let's debate it.
Yeah,
But
That's the fun of it. Yeah, that's the fun of it. I think it was a great topic for the show today, because I think because it's so short,
right,
there's a lot of open to interpretation. And I'm sure if I had, from my point, if I had read a lot of her posts previous to this, I'm sure I would have a lot more background knowledge of, oh no, this is how she says it. Like I see all the Sam Altman posts or whatever. I go, oh, that's similar. And I can kind of connect the dots between different posts, or Ethan Malik, same thing. But yeah, for this one, I'm literally looking at it as a singular one. By the way, I do want to call out Gwen Shaptez, who said Brian must be new, which I thought was hilarious. So that's okay. I'll take it. Hey, listen, I got one more person, one more expert, because there's tons of people in our comments who really love Allie and what she does. And so, look, I have one more person to go learn about and everything else, which is great. But I appreciate
have a thought about how systems analysts may have fallen by the wayside, and it has to do with SaaS. the emergence of SaaS made it less important to have somebody who was applying systems thinking in the earlier process within companies where you had to build something to support the business process improvement. So they had an IT department that was writing software, and you had engineers inside the enterprise, and you still do. But now the emergence of SaaS makes it so that you can buy externally packaged business processes that are guided by the user interface. Now that meant that, we don't really need that guy, the systems analyst anymore, because we're just buying these packages that integrate with each other. And now we have a very standardized, regulated internal system stack that's marshaling all of our business processes together. Great. So the systems analyst went away. But now AI is different. AI requires someone to kind of surgically insert AI into this operating system stack and understand what the implications are of those changes. And so a systems analyst, an AI systems analyst, is now in demand.
Right. And I think one of the pieces that routinely comes up from that standpoint of the systems analyst, of the system like interpreter, is that even though people understand, people may be familiar with the phrase AI isn't software, it's AI, right? I think that it's something you're interfacing with through your computer. It seems like it's software, right? It seems like it's a SaaS. It seems like all this stuff. And then inevitably you come up with like, hey, why isn't this doing this? Why doesn't this work? Right. We've talked before. My holy grail is that when I say search and replace within the canvas, I would really like ChatGPT to write a Python program to search and replace and not give me the most probable answer about searching and replace, because that is not accurate. It's very frustrating. And so like I pull it out, I do other things with that. I think the understanding, the visceral understanding that it is not software is one of those positions, that is one of those conversations that the system analyst is always having, right? That interpretation of like, hey, yeah, I see you read in Reader's Digest that somebody, was getting a really great result. Here's why we think that's not a great idea. And to Carl's point, you can hire people to come in who will say it's a great idea. Absolutely. We'll
Sure.
sell you our template, right? We'll install this automation for you with this decision tree that happens at the front. So I think that's one of the pieces, because like, as you know, when you do it with enterprise, it's a Titanic situation. Like you're turning a big ship. You're changing like a really big piece of how something functions. Or if you follow Carl's model, you're in a big ship, but you're just changing a tiny piece so that we can all get familiar with what these sorts of things are, do, and what kind of return that your system is going to have, like the people you're going to find out.
Well, I mean, look, I've worked with enterprise size companies. More I deal with small, medium, I would say enterprise, like smaller, like 500 or less employees type. But I've certainly worked with some enterprise clients. And at least I mean, just in my experience, it does tend to start in one area. Like they're big enough where somebody is making, I've had clients where we only work with like the Western unit of yada, yada, yada. I can't name names, but it's kind of like that. And we build and deploy solutions there. And then what you're hoping for is they have such success, more than likely lots of other parts of the company, even clone parts of that company that are just happening in other parts of the world that are doing the same job, aren't even aware of it inside the large enterprises. And then it's like, how do you expand from those first set of champions and then get people who are bought in because it's like making real world difference for them, and then go to the next section and go to the next section. And sometimes that works, sometimes it falls flat. It really depends on leadership and whether they see it or not, how the enterprise is set up, obviously. But we've definitely had success with that, where we've started with one particular area, regional area of a very large company, and seen it slowly start growing as it gets passed along. But it's amazing to me how many silos exist within large companies and how one hand absolutely does not know what the other hand is doing. They're almost working independently, other than being underneath a umbrella. They're working almost independently as small companies, and I'm sure there's a lot of good reasons for that that are well beyond my expertise. But that becomes a really big problem with it. By the way, I want to say, totally side note, that I love that people in the comments. We always talk about our folks in the comments who are awesome, who both respond to us talking on the show, which is great, and then we bring in those comments and stuff, and then they also have their side quests, and so they went on a whole Allie side quest with the names. So they talked about Ali Wong. They started talking about Ally McBeal. Then they started talking about the dancing baby and Ally McBeal. Then they talked about something else, circled it back, came back to Allie K Miller. And so I love our chat, folks. And so if you want to join us, I should bring this up. We do the show. If you're listening to us at some other part of the day, we're here live doing this at 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. We've been doing that now. This is episode 421. We have not missed a Monday through Friday show since we started almost 2 years ago. It had been a year and a half-ish, somewhere between a year and a half, 2 years ago. So you're always more than welcome to join us. The place we tell you to go, because it's where most people are, is on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube during our live hour, our 10 a.m. to roughly 11 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, you can join all the fine folks like Gareth and Jen and Jude and everybody else that's in the comments, and be part of the conversation. We absolutely are reading that. It's on the right side of my screen. So we're all reading those comments, bringing them into the conversations. A lot of times we'll throw them up on the chat. So if that's something you're interested in, you can always join us live. If not, that's okay too. We'll always say, hey, a like or subscribe is always well appreciated, and it does a lot for helping us grow the channel, so we too can be hopefully as big as Allie K Miller apparently is, and get her name out there and grow our audience as well. So just wanted to bring that out and give props to our chat folks who are pretty awesome. Other thoughts on this? Jimmy, did you want to jump in at all? I know you're sort of silent and listening. Jimmy, I should say too, like, you're dealing with a little bit of a delay from where you currently are, and so that's part of it too. I know it's a little harder for Jimmy right now to jump in and stuff. But what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'll bookend this a little bit. I think a couple of the observations we can really dive into or dissect, like Beth said, from the post, is Allie is, like Andy said, she works in an enterprise a lot. So it seems like she's dialed into what trends that she's seeing when it comes to AI in that field. So it looks like there is a push to fill in or address the skills gap. And there's been talk of skills gap in industry for a while now, and getting from people from beginning in their career to becoming experienced or senior level. And so part of that is AI now. And so I think she's just identifying that companies' knee-jerk reaction or their approach is simply, oh, do they know about AI? Can they build? And I guess that's the analogy I'll put it. She's identifying that enterprises or companies need to look at finding architects and less builders. So right now the concentration is just on the builders and not on the architects. And that's where the system thinking reference comes in, because your architects are going to be able to see that holistic. And I think Andy explained it really well about what a system analyst or an AI system analyst would really provide, is that holistic approach to your business. Now, like you said, Brian, if you can take one of your experienced senior people and upskill them with everything that they need to know about AI, have them dial in or work with someone to get them dial in, that might be the ideal situation. And I think that's what she's identifying, is architects instead of builders.
It's a good point. It's a good way to put it too. I like the idea of architect. I think that kind of helps. Cisco just threw in the chat too, as we're wrapping things up. He's like, here's an interesting question. Are people just born as system thinkers, or can it be trained, learned? I'll throw that out to anybody on the, here we go. We'll just throw it up on the screen real quick. If anybody wants to jump in that, I would say I believe it could be learned. Although I will say people who are born as like tinkerers, people who like to dissect, people who are just naturally curious about how things work, probably would do well in that area, but I definitely think it could be trained or learned. What do you guys think?
It definitely can be learned. There are some people who see systems or see processes just as the way that they engage, right? So they go through the world and they sort of see, yes, I see a process, but I don't get the sequence correct sometimes. So like mapping those boxes. But I'll say what I said in the chat, which is that I think actually in business, often they're forged or they're kind of like found in a high stress situation, because often the first time that you're doing that is you're trying to figure out where the thing is. You have a tangled ball of twine, and somebody's got to come in and like talk to the people, find out like where the tangle is happening, what was supposed to happen, those sorts of things. So I actually often find that the people who understand the process didn't come in for that. They just, somebody had to do it. And so
I,
now they're the people.
I have a short kind of closer, hopefully, so we don't go too far over time here, about a simplification of systems thinking when applied to understanding internal and external customer relationships inside an enterprise. So every department, every person has a customer, and you have to be customer focused. It's clear that you want to optimize for the customer in order to enrich the sort of virtuous cycle that happens between customers who are satisfied and companies who are providing that satisfaction. Now, inside a company, you either have external customers that you're talking to, or you have internal customers. Some departments serve internally alone. HR is an example of one. Customer support is an externally facing customer organization. Now, the question is, when you think about there being customers, and you think about your business processes as enhancing and improving the relationship with those customers. So everybody has a customer, everybody's got to be optimizing that. Then you're engaging in a kind of a simple form of systems thinking. Like it gives you a framework around which to think about the idea that every part of the business has a process, and it has to have an objective, and that objective is to satisfy their customers. And they have to be relentlessly focused on that. And so I close with this one thought, which is, if you think about governmental employees, is it a fair assumption that none of them sitting at their desks and not deserving their paychecks have no customers? Or when you remove them from their position summarily, are you dissatisfying some customer that was being served by that position, whether internal or external?
All right, we'll leave it there then. What do I want to say here as I was wrapping up? So look, we'll be back the rest of this week. I was listening to Andy. I was like, oh, hold on. gotta go to an outro here. One, I want to say just a quick shout out to my buddy, Pete, who texted me during the show live today and said he was listening. Pete and I were both firefighters over in Iraq, back in around 2009, 2010. And that was just super cool of him to do. So hi, Pete. Thanks for being here. He's a teacher, by the way. So just a shout out to all our folks out there who are teachers and giving back. Pete is one of the people saying hi, Pete, in the comments too. Pete's one of the good ones, man. He's a great high school teacher. Has been doing it for many, many years. So just wanted to give him a personal shout out. Thanks for texting me there in the show. It made me smile. Tomorrow and the rest of the week, we have all sorts of topics coming up in AI. So we'll definitely be back the rest of the week. Come hang out with us live if you can. If not, and you're listening at some other part of the day, hey, we appreciate you. If you like what you're doing, if this is the first time you've ever watched the show, just know that we're here 5 days a week. We have other stuff going on through the weekends and side shows and things like that. There's a lot you can learn. You can go to thedailyAIshow.com. And if you'd like just a little extra, if you're the type of person that likes to wake up on a Sunday morning, grab a cup of coffee or whatever your drink of choice is, and just read and a little more about AI, we put out a once a week newsletter that goes out on Sunday mornings at 8 a.m. Eastern. And it's just a way for you to take more than we can give during just this live show. And so you can sign up for free at thedailyishow.com. That's it for today, guys. Thanks to everybody. Have a great day, and we'll be back tomorrow with another interesting AI topic as always. See you then.
Aloha.